will definitely take something out of the ordinary to knock down this man in the bottom left, the red Zerg player representing Shopify Rebellion. He is Lambo.
All right, Nady. I think back of the interview that Elazer had after his crazy game versus Denver immediately, where Elazer said, I had a little chat with Lambo, or I played some ZVZs with Lambo, and Lambo basically said, do you know how to defend the 13-12 of Denver? That's something that Elazer specifically said, and that is what happened, and that's why Denver got ultra far ahead on Oxide. Well, guess what Denver is doing in game 1? It seems like we're going to look at a one-base Baneling opening with obviously Zergling speed, and yeah, just Banes and try to straight up win it.
Reminds me of the good old days, right? We talk about what ZVZ used to be before we had the kind of stable, like, okay, we go to 2-base, 3-base, we see a decent amount. It was just people slamming Lings and Banes into each other, and it's like getting a natural expansion became like this gift that you had to earn for yourself. It's like, do you want to have more than one base? You're going to need to have, you know, Korean level APM to not die to the first attack that your opponent throws at you, because we would see this so regularly, and those Lings are coming out like you were talking about. And I think that this is one of those tests. If you're going to be one of the top players for Europe, if you want to be able to take out these big dogs, it's going to be a lot of ZVZ, and dealing with situations and attacks like this has to be one of them. Lambo Overlord definitely saw it coming. Yep. The spawning pool is near the ramp in the main base, Kev, and he doesn't, you know, he's going to have a limited amount of time to get defenses up to deal with this.
Yep, I'm actually a bit surprised that we're pulling drones against this one. Lambo knows that Denver is still on one base, but this seems to be part of the strategy. Maybe Lambo just knows that with this build, you don't have too many links to begin with. So if you would morph a couple of them into Banelings immediately, you can't even fight the drones. So this could be very big brain play by Lambo. Now he does see the first few Banelings morphing. This is obviously when it's time to disengage. There is only a single spine going up, but that spine is going up in the natural. And I kind of feel, Nate, that if this spine goes up completely uncontested, how the hell does Denver ever win?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty tough to break that, especially if you can't get the Banelings onto it, right? We see that it could be a focus fire situation on the part of Lambo. Was willing to bring the drones out in those slowlings to just buy as much time as possible. But I like that spine's in range of the ramp.
Sick.
At the very least, Denver should not be able to run the Banes like up into the main and try to hit the workers. Of course, we know that the Queens are there too, so they're going to block the ramp as well. But Denver's just mostly running these Lings around the main, and he is denying a lot of mining by forcing these drones to move around. And of course, he doesn't have link speed, so it's going to take a long time to ever catch or kill, if he ever can, these Lings that are inside of his base.
At this point, this is nowhere near good enough. Denver is morphing one Ling into a Baneling, though, in the corner of Lambo's main. I mean, Lambo's kind of missed this, and one Baneling could absolutely mess things up because the Queens are not participating in this fight. One Baneling is going to show up. But Lambo sees it. Can still get a decent connection. Gets a really good connection, to be honest. That's 7 or 8 Zerglings, and now a drone or 2 is going to fall. But no matter how good that single Bane was, I still think this is nowhere near good enough.
It's such an awkward situation because I think everything was looking really nice there, and then, well, I mean, the one Baneling gets about 7 or 8 Zerglings. So now the Queen comes over, and that's when he's going to try to make a move for the natural. The drone not moving, Kev. 12 of them blown to smithereens. They're going to get a couple more on the way out, hitting the spine crawler too. And, well, okay, I guess Denver's, that's got to be the damage that he was looking for there, Roddy. 6 drones, 5 left for Lambo. He sniped 1 more on the way up into that main versus 17 for Denver.
I stand corrected. It was nowhere near good enough. Now it's more than good enough. Denver has taken a commanding lead in this game. I do think a little bit sloppy there by Lambo. 2 mistakes, obviously. First, not seeing the first Zergling being split up of the pack and morphing into a Baneling in the corner of his main, because that Baneling got not just a good connection, but it caused a lot of chaos. And afterwards, trying to deal with the leftover chaos, that's when those 4 Banelings snuck into the natural. And normally there shouldn't be any universe where Denver can find that amount of damage against 4 Queens in the spine crawler. Yeah, if the drones are not moving, he can find the damage. Well done by Denver, and hopefully a wake-up call for Lambo, because he's gonna have to step up.
Yeah, for sure. That's such a hard spot to be in. You know, losing the Lings inside of the main base led to needing to pull the Queens away from the ramp. And even though he wasn't making a play for the ramp, like if he tries to move on the natural and Lambo doesn't have to look inside of his main base and try to deal with those Zerglings, then you can get some target fire going. The Queens can try to grab the first Baneling or maybe the second one. You know, obviously the drones would be pulled instead of left there. So everything completely changes off the hands of just a good Baneling detonation by Denver, forcing the situation that he needed to occur to happen and being able to take that game. That's how you do it. That's how you upset somebody, that's for sure.
Yeah. Pretty frustrating loss, I think, for Lambo, because at first it really felt like there wasn't a worry in the world. It felt that his defense was excellent. He got that spine up without any issues, got the queen up, then a couple of lings ran into the main base, but he had lings and a queen there himself. I looked at the scenario, I'm like, I don't see what Denver could possibly do here. But the fact that he split off one ling when Lambo wasn't paying attention, morphed just a single ling into a Bane, that Baneling then causing some chaos, and in the aftermath of all that chaos, that's when the 4 extra Banelings just casually run into the fully saturated natural, which normally wouldn't even be a fully saturated natural. I feel like that's a 1 in 100 kind of game, because if you resume that from replay, it really didn't look pretty for this man. But who cares? These are the playoffs, and winning is winning. Something bound into your mile, right, Vin Diesel? In the bottom left side, we are looking at the main base of this dude who's representing Team Oblon, taking the 1-0 lead. It's Denver.
A win is a win indeed, Kev. As we see in the top right, our red Zerg player representing Shopify Rebellion, he is Lambo. And I always find it interesting because I'm sure I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this too, Kev. But, you know, I've always felt like Lambo is kind of one of those players that, you know, likes to make adjustments to stuff, right? He's kind of seen as being a more of like a cerebral type of Zerg player. It doesn't just mash out super mechanical builds randomly. There's usually a decent bit of thought process to it, and he generally gives insightful answers and interviews about why he makes choices that he does. So, I know on one hand, I'm curious, like what exactly was the thought process if Denver was going to try that strategy, and what would he have wanted to do differently if he knew something like that was happening again? Because Denver just looked so sharp and on point. I was really impressed with just how much he was able to get away with.
Well, I think that Lambo kind of expected it, or was at least thinking about it, because when he pulled the drones that far out at first, I'm like, this is something you would do maybe against a 12 pool with a hatchery behind all of this, but Denver never dropped the hatch on his side of the map, and Lambo knew that with his Overlord. So this is clearly something that Lambo thought of, and it's actually really smart, because Denver doesn't have too many links to begin with, and if you morph 3 or 4 of those links into Banelings immediately, you can't even fight the drones. And this time process that went by allowed Lambo to get the spine up. So I honestly thought Lambo's defense was really smart, and I totally agree with you. I think he is very smart. I think he's very knowledgeable about the game and almost every scenario that a Zerg player can find themselves in. It's just that he made a mistake in the execution afterwards when he perhaps thought that this is already over. Like Lambo, in his mind, he's very outspoken, right? If you ask him like, hey Lambo, before that like one Baneling morphed into the main, how did you look? And I'm guarantee you that he will say, this game is over, like I can't possibly lose this game. It's just that Denver managed to trick him, managed to get a Baneling up in the main, and then obviously the follow-up Banelings in the natural getting way bigger connections than they ever should. But even after that one Bane in the main, I didn't hate it for Lambo until the 4 Banelings blew up 16 more drones in the net.
Yeah. It's a tough spot to be in. Wild start to the series. Denver, the underdog, but I mean, when we talk about what allows you to overcome these difficult situations, I do love to see when the underdog player does something a bit aggressive, when they try to limit the amount of opportunities that the other player has to outplay them. Because if you're going to get outplayed, the longer the game goes, the more you get outplayed, right? So if you can limit that time, if you can hit your timing and be really crisp with your attacks, force your game plan through, execute it as quickly as possible, that's just always a good time, I think.
We definitely need to talk about what's happening here in 2K Atmosphere. Even though we're only 3 minutes and 20 seconds in, and this is normally where we can do some generic chitty chat, Lambo is actually being thrown for a loop here. Because if he scouts, he sees the evolution chamber, it kind of feels that Denver wants to do a gasless roach build, or at least stay gasless for a while, go 2-base roach. Instead, Denver had a Baneling nest tucked in the back of his main base and had a lot of Zerglings pocketed away as well, so that Evo chamber kind of is a fake at first. Lambo does know about it. He cancelled something in the front. I actually wonder what Lambo cancelled. Lambo doesn't have a Baneling. He doesn't have a Baneling nest yet, so this is actually going to be a pretty difficult hold. Keeping the 3rd hatchery alive is going to be almost impossible, but even the natural is not going to be necessarily safe, because look at the amount of Banelings that are heading into the natural of Lambo. He did evacuate the drone zone. I think that's very smart.
Yeah, doesn't want to give this up. It's still going to have that spine crawler going up in the back of the natural too to try and help cover for that. Banelings are working their way through. One of the queens gets knocked down. The second one's getting a bit low. That transfuse is going to come through, however. And there are still a lot of Zerglings behind this, but I don't know if he wants to just smash the Banelings into these Queens and Force Blue. Okay, they actually reposition, and some of them do kind of slip by, but he's going to instead hold this low ground for now, maybe trying to bait the Lings. I think he's trying to use the Lings to at least deny retaking the natural rather than losing everything quickly, and maybe killing this third base. Very smart move, too. Just take that off the table. Since he's not going to be able to get many drones.
I actually don't think he's going to be able to get this hatchery anymore. He absolutely could have gotten it before, but Denver wanted more. Denver wanted to straight up win the game, and that is not going to happen. And now he actually doesn't even get the third hatch, which means this went from like, oh, maybe not that bad to actually very bad. Because in the end of the day, other than lost mining time, he really didn't get a whole lot done. Now, Lambo actually has a couple of random spines that finished up, one behind the main, one in the natural. But it doesn't really matter. These spines will obviously come in handy. I feel that Denver had the opportunity there to just get a lead, but he didn't want the lead. He wanted to straight up win. And I have the feeling that backfired a little bit, Nate.
Yeah, well, we're talking about trying to create those opportunities and force the game to be short. That's kind of it, but you can see what it looks like when it doesn't work, Roddy, as these Queens are going to get surrounded outside by Denver's third, and that means these two Banelings don't really have a whole lot to stop them from just running in. One of them does get picked, but the rest of these drones very weak for the Zerglings to kill. Does counterattack onto that third. A Queen in his spine will buy some time, but 12 plus workers dead for Denver, and Lambo, he's got to be feeling good. The defense is there at home. He has the Lings with the Queens to support to stop outside that natural. And everything that's been in his side of the map has been deflected, but he's still morphing Banelings inside of Denver's base. Super aggressive.
Yeah, this game is pretty much all over. I think the only saving grace that Denver has is that he has +1 melee on the way, and that can obviously come in real handy in Zergling Wars. But I think Denver knows it. He's just maybe not 100% sure how far behind he is. So he's going to be like, all right, let's see if I can still hang in there a bit longer. But a 14 drone deficit, losing a couple of Queens as well, is something you don't normally recover from. And those leftover spines of the previous attack came in real handy there in dealing with that counterattack.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like we were talking about it, but he had the one going up front early on, and he was kind of like, okay, maybe give up the natural, give up the third, and Denver forced his hand just a little bit too much there, sitting now at 29 drones to 43. So with his +1 attack finishing, yeah, the Zerglings are going to be stronger. They'll definitely win head-to-head Ling-based fights, but it's not exactly what the entire game is going to boil down to, since Lambo's making that transition into roaches. The Banelings are going to lose a lot of the value that they could have, and I mean, it's like +1 Lings. If they get a big surround on roaches, you can definitely do a lot, but it's just how are you going to rebuild the drone economy while also not dying to whatever Lambo does next? I think it is just going to be a bunch of roaches, 12 of them on the way. +1 Carapace is almost done. So that +1 attack, even on Denver's Lings, Roddy, not going to end up being that impactful.
Nope, and the Ling's still finding a bit of additional damage. I mean, Denver knows that he is going to be ultra all-in, ultra committed. It could have worked if Lambo was very stubborn and wouldn't have built a single unit at all, but Lambo wasn't born last night. He knew exactly what was happening there, so he decided to just play it safe, fire up 12 roaches, and in the end gets the job done. I do think this was a missed opportunity, though, for Denver. Lambo actually had an Evo chamber going up in the natural. He canceled that, made a spine, then canceled that too, because he's like, this spine is too exposed. But I feel that Denver could have just settled for killing the third hatchery, and then maybe delay a lot of mining time in the natural, threaten with a couple of Banelings, maybe make him overreact with spines in the main, and then it's 2 base against 2 base, but you're the one with an Evo, you're the one with +1 on the way. I actually think it would have been a very playable spot, but hell or glory, Denver went for glory, and it just didn't quite work out.
Yeah. At the same time, can't blame him. Definitely, you want kind of a strong position to be in, especially against Lambo, up 1-0 going into game 2. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Brings the aggro, but maybe on Light Shade, we have a little bit of pullback. Says, I'll try to you look for little opportunities later down the line, or I don't know. Maybe he just goes full pedal to the metal. Kev pushes the gas through the floor and just goes for another crazy all in.
I mean, it's a very different best of 5 so far than whenever we get to cast Serral, for instance, because then we always talk about +1 roach timings and strong economies and Ravager micro. But, it's a different blend of ZVZ, but I do really enjoy this because you know that if you blink once, it could be all over. And at least Denver is giving us something to talk about. Game 3 will be played on Lightshade. Between these two, players are ready. We're ready. Let's go ahead and hop on into it. In the bottom right side, we're looking at the main basement. We did get a great Zergling scout up, of course. Seeing all these links as early as possible definitely helped him in the defense all along. Our German Zerg, representing Shopify Rebellion, is Lambo.
And his opponent, the blue Zerg player, was able to get a fast one on him in game number 1. Can he do it again? He is Denver.
Good thing, by the way, we didn't address this at all, but we'd like to apologize for starting a little bit later today, guys, than we were supposed to. There was a bit of a scheduling conflict. We did whatever we could to prevent this from happening, because obviously DreamHack is supposed to start at 4 p.m. Central European Time, 10 p.m. East, 7 a.m. on the West Coast. But yeah, literally no players were able to play at 4 p.m. We did whatever we could, but yeah, we decided, could we do Nathanias and Roddy co-op for an hour and a half on the ESL main channel? And they said no, we're just going to start the broadcast a little bit later. That's why we are here right now.
It was heartbreaking, Kev, because I was so ready. You know, you thought it was beautiful watching me just build missile turrets and siege tanks before, but in co-op they have even more bells and whistles on them. My true chance to shine, Roddy, was stolen out from under me.
Maybe one day, Nate, if there is ever a bit of downtime again, maybe Sarah has internet issues once, we can sneak in a little co-op mission.
Sneak in a cheeky co-op mission. I appreciate that.
People are going to tune into the main channel like, what are we watching? It's like, man, it's been a while since I watched StarCraft 2. There is a lot of new units.
Terran's got flame turrets? I've been where are these bad boys, man? Good times. Yeah, so quick 3-base setup from Denver, by the way, in this one, Roddy, and took the natural later than that 3rd base. So I can only assume this is trying to throw Lambo off a little bit in regards to the timings, maybe make him think that he went for a pool first and is going to do something aggressive. But his spawning pool is actually done before Denver's, so bit of a cheeky opener here from our blue Zerg.
Yep, Lambo still doesn't quite know, or maybe he's thinking about it, but he's definitely not confirmed it yet. I'm taking a look at the vision that his Overlord had. Now he sees creep, so that should show up on his mini-map as well. And at this point, Lambo will know exactly what is up. Can he do something about this immediately? The answer is most likely no. You know what's also kind of shocking is that Lambo now has 192 gas in the bank. Whoa, he's building a spine. He really misread this. I thought he saw the creep, and he absolutely did see the creep, Nate, because you can take a look at Lambo's vision, but he misread it completely. Oh, no.
Yeah, getting anything defensively speaking would definitely be something to worry about, because there's not really a huge threat like that we're seeing on the way.
Wait.
Denver's just powering up those 3 bases. I think if he had that spine on their way, though, he did cancel it. There's no more.
No. It was very short. It was only for a brief second. I'm being a little bit dramatic, but you know, at the highest level, these things do matter. And Lambo wants to know what he's up against ASAP. And the fact that it took him, even though he saw the creep, a little bit longer than it should have taken him, and even wasting some resources on the spine is a little bit problematic. Now, I was wondering what Lambo was going to do with all that gas, because he never started circling speed. He just goes for a very quick lair. Takes another extractor now in the main base. It could be a classic Lambo +1 roach attack, but this is going to be kind of weird, man, because Lambo is going to be on 2 bases for quite some time, while Denver has the quickest 3-base setup possible.
Yeah, it's a very awkward situation, because at the very least, even if he doesn't squeeze out too many more drones than Lambo with this, because he doesn't want to expose himself too much, you still have the workers spread out more. They're mining more efficiently as a result, and it helps with, you know, worrying about whether or not you're going to mine out your base or something like that down the line. Spreading out where that mining is occurring keeps the economy a little bit more stable long term. Lambo, if he doesn't get that 3rd base up, or if he feels like he can't get it, then I can definitely see where that can get really awkward. He might feel forced into trying to do something aggressive. Like, of course, his lair is done, so he's going to get roach speed and +1. But do you think he's going to just go full pedal to the metal on roaches and just try to kill Denver?
It's so hard. I feel like he has a few too many drones for that, right? If he would have stayed like at a very low drone count, I could see how he could hit one of these devastating old school 34 drone +1 roach attacks. But I think at this point, it's almost a little bit too late. And I think he's just not going to have enough production. But maybe I'm wrong, but now there is a drone sneaking out. So I think Lambo is going to at least try to test the waters, especially once +1 is done. Missile attacks, that is. But of course, he does have a 3rd going up behind all of this.
Yeah. It'll be awkward too, because Denver does have roaches coming out now. He's starting to get that +1 carapace, but we don't have the lair for him. So if there was a sort of, you know, roach based battle, it would get pretty difficult quickly, just because he's not going to be able to disengage. He's not going to be able to chase down Lambo's roaches. And as a result, if he moves out of his base with his own roaches, he's super dead if Lambo jumps on him. So Denver kind of has to just sit back and chill. I feel like that, but at the same time, he's just gonna commit on the lings with this.
I think he's going to morph a lot of his roaches into Ravagers, so in a weird way, he's going to play Ravager Ling. And that's where the +1 Carapace can come in really handy, because it kind of denies the +1 missile attacks of Lambo. And if Lambo does want to be aggressive, like even though Lambo is down 7 workers, so maybe it feels like he is supposed to make something happen. Of course, if they fight while +1 missile attacks is done, which it is, and Carapace is not, it could get awkward. But look at the amount of Lings that Denver has on the other side of the base. He doesn't quite get into the natural, but getting a cancel on this hatchery really puts Lambo in an all-in scenario, and then it doesn't matter that much that Denver doesn't have roach speed, because all he needs to do is just get his units in one place and defend. If he holds here, Nate, he could very well take the 2-1 lead, and he's actually going to completely surround the army of Lambo here in the center.
Gets a huge wraparound on the bottom of the ramp. The corrosive vials landing dead center of this army, completely surrounded. So not really any ability to reposition these forces for Lambo. He just kind of had to take this fight on the terms of Denver. The roach reinforcements coming in are going to help, but Kev, I guess this is where those overwhelming numbers of Zerglings get quite terrifying, because if he's surrounded one more time, those vials in the middle were absolutely filthy.
Yep. Lambo realizes that he's just no longer going to win this game right here, right now. That fight was a little bit too good for Denver, so he decides to retreat, go home, and go up to 3 bases one more time. But this doesn't change the fact that he was still economically behind. The only thing that Lambo really has going for himself is that he had double Evo a lot quicker, so he's got +2 on the way, +1 Carapace on the way. But Lambo's gonna have to pull out a rabbit out of his hat to turn this game around, because it's looking very, very dire for Lambo. Especially if Denver spends his money, he's gonna take a pretty commanding army supply lead.
The benefit of having had that third base for such a long time, once he does get that window to breathe, it's so easy to saturate it and get that economy up. Lambo with all the pressure on him now. And as you were saying, Kev, he's got these overlords out in the middle. He's been trying to keep alive too, but if Denver does spend all that money, it's going to turn to that supply lead is only going to continue to grow as Overseer comes in for a scout and basically just saying, is there anything here that I haven't considered that's going on? And the answer is no. There is no Mutalisk transition. There's nothing crazy happening. It's Lambo just continuing to upgrade his Roach Ravager army, but Denver's got a ton of Lings waiting too. So if he baits him out, he's going to be able to go for a backstab. And if he decides to commit to the full fight, maybe he'll just bring these in as extra reinforcements. Lings are going to try to surround, but he has the ramp, so he can retreat up there. But that does mean that the third base is completely forfeit, Roddy. So if Lambo doesn't want to walk down the ramp and eat biles, he's giving up all the potential of getting the economy back to Denver. And he says, okay, well, I'll just come down and fight this. But there are so many Zerglings getting in the way, bullying this force, keeping him from being able to get where he wants to go.
Like, first I was really worried there. I was like, Denver, don't go off that ramp. That's a way to throw away the lead you have. But then he just kind of used it as a zoning tool, spam Ravages, Corrosive Vow on that ramp, and then the Lings can take out the hatchery. But he definitely shouldn't stick around too long. He has created an even bigger advantage for himself. Now, just go home, spend your money, and let that superior economy do the work for you. Denver is honestly playing a very smart game. He obviously got the best of Lambo in the early game with the mind games and stuff, but this is working out in a tremendous manner. The Lings are going to get a little surround here too, but that's not a fight that they can win. Army supply, it's still somewhat close, but if we take a look at the income advantage that Denver is currently enjoying, it's between 600 and 900 resources a minute. If you're just building roaches and Lings, Nate, that's a lot of extra units you have over your opponent.
Oh yeah, and it's not even like, I think you were mentioning this earlier, and I hadn't even really thought about it that much, but the upgrade situation, having the Carapace so that the Lings don't get two-shot. Denver even gets some Lings through Lambo's wall into the main, so might get a drone or two here, but also gets a little bit of information. As we were saying, there's nothing crazy happening, but it's nice to know that sometimes. And Lambo trying to force the issue, but there is so much waiting on top of this ramp for Denver. Is he going to be able to even retreat with this army? I'm not so sure. There's so many more Ravagers for Denver on this that Lambo cannot really engage against this. So it's, I mean, Kev, the situation just goes from bad from worse. He's at 38 drones to 57. What do you even do if you could like magically get to lurkers? I can see how you start to drag it out, but that's like next game. That's how far away that is.
Yeah, no, lurkers, I think that's a pipe dream. That's something we could dream about indeed for the next game or maybe a game 5. I honestly think the only thing that Lambo could do is try to max out. As long as you max out on the same units as your opponent, you obviously have more than a fighting shot. In a weird way, that's even going to favor him. He's going to have the bigger army because he's got 19 drones less. He is getting a Tunneling Claw and Burrow, which I don't hate, not the most expensive upgrades in the game, and it can absolutely make miracles happen. But yeah, I think at this point it's just hang on for dear life, try to survive, and try to max out.
Yeah, that's a good point. At the very least, get it as close as possible before you take that big fight. But Denver continues to push up, even has some Banelings to splash a little damage across the rest of these forces. Wow. Files have been raining down beautifully. Lambo does have a good spread at this point, but I just think that economic difference, the supply lead, is something that there's still not a lot to work around. The third base, even if he holds this, it's only like 5 drones mining there. And what little was there is dead anyway, so this will get routed for now, it seems. But again, Denver has 3 full mining bases, Rod.
Yeah, did you see the micro there on the Ravages? Burrowing a couple of low HP Ravages, well done. Lambo really needs to cherish every unit he has. That was one hell of a hold, man, because he was down in supply. That was obviously not going to be easy. A lot of reinforcements were coming in the mix as well for Denver. It doesn't mean that Lambo is suddenly winning this game, because he's absolutely not, but a very impressive hold regardless. And losing Ravages is so painful for Lambo because he simply doesn't have the economy to rebuild these Ravages over and over again.
No, that third base just keeps getting wailed away at. Meanwhile, Denver has the 4th hatchery done in the bottom left. So he'll have the opportunity to move those drones away from the slowly mining out main base. Lambo has mostly just been repositioning those drones for himself onto his 3rd. So Overseer's going to see that hatch, knows, okay, there's the 4th base, and I don't know what you do, Kev, because like you said, trying to get to any other sort of tech is a pipe dream. It's a bitter memory of games gone by where you were able to get beyond just roaches vomiting all over each other, but this is not that game.
And Denver is actually about to get an an upgrade advantage as well, as +2 missile attacks is finishing up. I do like what Denver has done. A few times I really thought he was overextending, but then he just kind of settled for another little victory and he went home again. He has done a tremendous job in making sure that he doesn't throw this game. He is now still 26 supply ahead. The cool thing about Lambo in that previous big fight, so not the fight on the left side, but the fight that took place over here, is that he managed to save a couple of Ravages with Burrow, but it also kind of revealed the ace up his sleeve, because then Denver obviously started morphing Overseers and didn't take any damage from Roaches with Tunneling Claws. So Denver is here one more time, and this time he has more than just a little army advantage. He's got a lot more units, he's got better upgrades, he's got more Ravages in the mix as well. I don't think Lambo can hold again, and perhaps against all odds, it's the Frenchman who takes the 2-1 lead in this best of 5 here in the lower bracket of the DreamHack Masters Winter 2021. And honestly, he's playing very well, Nate, and you think he's playing very smart.
Yeah, no, I could not agree with you anymore, Kevin. I think it's really, really awesome to see the kind of mind games he's been bringing out, forcing Lambo to make bad choices and putting him in awkward situations. But we are going to go to a quick break, and when we return, we will get to the bottom of this one. We'll find out who's going to win between Lambo and Denver. We'll see you in a few. We are back. Hey there. I knew you missed us. Welcome to the DreamHack Masters StarCraft 2. We are literally loading into Gigantha for our next map in this ZVZ series. It's delivered, Kev. We've had some banelings, we've had some roaches, but most importantly, we've had some mind games, and perhaps Lambo maybe overthinking a few of these situations, as Denver has been kind of pulling him into this web of madness with these strange openers he's been doing.
Yep, and it definitely does scare me a little bit that his Overlord saw the creep, but then he still didn't put 2 and 2 together immediately. I guess it's one of these scenarios where he saw it, but he didn't really see it. And this is pretty terrifying, man, because this is the lower bracket, no more second chances. You're now down 2-1 in a deciding best of 5, and you're playing against a mad lad who's got all in after all in store for you. This man has to be feeling it a little bit right now. In the bottom left side, a German Zerg down 1-2. It is Lambo.
Came into the series as a favorite, but that pressure is on by this man with the quick pull in the northeast, the blue Zerg player. He is Denver.
Quick pull is one thing, Nady Poo. It's not just a quick pull, it's a quick gas as well. So this is Blackburn all over again. I think it's funny because this build has really fallen out of fashion. People don't really do this anymore because it's not supposed to be that good. But every single time I see Denver do it, he either wins the game with it or does a ridiculous amount of damage. And it never looks like it's going to work at first. It's just, I don't know what happens. Things just get weird and somehow he finds everything he looks for and more.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like that old saying where it's like, okay, the builds that are bad can still be good just because not all of the other top players are going to be doing it. So how much practice do you really get against somebody with the mechanics of a player like Denver, but doing builds that maybe you'd more expect to see from a random barcode on the ladder, where you're like, oh, okay, you know, this build, yeah, you can get a quick win off of somebody with this, but it's not a reliable strategy. It's not a viable strategy to just do every game, which is always kind of a funny thing to hear people say, because it doesn't need to be viable every game. It only needs to work in the one scenario that you want to use it. And so far, Denver's been able to pull it off pretty well, and his lings are getting very close. He's been dodging some Overlord vision, and Lambo, well, he's just got those queens starting now, Roddy.
Yep, this time we are not going to have an early drone pull. We don't have a spine crawler going up on the low ground. So Lambo is going to go for the double spine defense in the main. But that means there is no saving this hatchery. And then I really wonder what's going to happen, because Denver is dropping a hatchery on his side of the map. So maybe we get a weird scenario where Lambo is the one who gets economically ahead because he's got more drones, but he's down a base. But imagine if Denver can actually still sneak 2 banelings into the middle line. If you kill the hatchery and you deal economic damage, Nate, this game is all over.
Yeah, there will not be a whole lot he can do. Actually, does
really
grab
smart.
some of the
Oh my
lings
goodness.
that are finishing. Does not want to fight the broodlings with the zerglings.
Wow.
And just really good heads up play by Denver, recognizing, okay, there is a little bit more damage I can do before I kill this hatchery, and that will even put me further ahead. And here he is. So the lings come over towards the main, and like you were saying, Roddy, there's 2 spines, but he's just going to surround the spawning pool. Well, if he kills this,
I think he will. I mean, there's banelings coming in too, so I don't really see how Lambo is going to be able to keep his spawning pool alive. That means no zergling speed. Lambo has no production. Imagine if Denver right now just morphs 5 more banelings. If you run all 5 banelings into this mineral line, it's kind of like close your eyes, but you're still going to kill drones regardless. Things are really going from bad to worse for Lambo. He's got 20 drones, but no spawning pool.
Yeah, he had 4 lings. They are turning into Banes, and that's it. That's all that he's got. They're more behind the mineral line as he rebuilds that pool. Those other Banes were coming through. Get a couple of drones. We were looking for. Kev gets one of the queens as well. And this situation is just painful. Denver has squeezed out a few drones behind this. He's going to take that lead as this next wave finishes. And his natural is done. So assuming that he's able to hold off any kind of counterattack that Lambo may want to bring to him, he should be okay. Lambo did want to go rebuild the hatch, but Kev, one happy Zergling is here to ruin the party.
Yep, and look at the money, right? Lambo could have already had his hatchery down a little while ago. Instead, he has to wait until the queen makes it to the low ground. At least Lambo had 4 lings left over that morphed into banelings that made this defense a bit more doable in the end. And he didn't lose too much. He just lost a couple of drones there. Because he wasn't able to spend his money, he was actually sitting on a bit of money. So it is still a game, but it's a game where Denver can find himself in a just very sweet spot at this point, because his base is up and running, while meanwhile Lambo's hatchery is not even halfway done.
Yeah, it's really just been the series, the story of the series is Denver putting Lambo into uncomfortable situations and kind of forcing him to freestyle and adjust on the fly. And that's where Lambo's been struggling a little bit, because we talk about the setup. It's like, okay, you got the spines, but the pool's a little bit out there and that gets picked off, and that's a huge loss. Or earlier, you know, he had the drones that were pulled out, but then the drones on the natural, you know, he just wasn't able to make the play in time when Denver ran up there on Blackburn. So it seemed like everything was there for Lambo to make the plays that he needed to, but Denver has just been causing so much chaos, it seems, that Lambo's had a really hard time reacting to what he's been getting thrown at.
In a weird way, I almost feel that the first game really put Lambo on tilt a bit. Because I know that Lambo can obviously beat himself up a bit over silly losses. And I think in the first game, there was not a worry in the world at first. He had a good read on the build. He had a good response. And it felt like that game should have been almost all over, because Denver was not supposed to find damage anymore. Instead, Denver just won. I have the feeling it tilted Lambo a little bit, and I don't want to say he hasn't been the same ever since, but not even seeing the creep on Lightshade with his Overlord when he could have seen it immediately. And yeah, this game, a bit unlucky. I gotta say, the Denver's execution was really sweet. When that hatchery dropped to like 5 HP, he sees 2 Lynx hatch. He's like, I'm not gonna fight Lynx and Brood Lynx. So he kills those 2 Lynx, grabs 2 more Lynx afterwards, and then gets the hatchery. I mean, all these little victories turn into one gigantic victory in the end. And Denver is just playing really well, and Lambo's making a couple of beauty hours.
Well, it's. I think that's a really good point. Could have just been knocked off keel a little bit by those early plays, and I think especially after the second one from Denver, you're like, man, this guy is just being so aggro and doing such weird stuff. And you know, we talk about the aggression, obviously, but that the game that we were just going at, where Denver got that second win, was kind of off this like, I'm going to make you think I'm being aggressive, but I'm actually being really greedy. And Lambo just never really was able to punish him for it, and just ended up kind of being behind the whole time, just because that third base was so freaking fast, and his got shut down early on. So keeping the scouting up is going to be a huge part of this one. Overseer goes into the main. It's like, okay, you have a lair. What else is going to come from this? Just the roaches? Okay, I'm going to start, you know, powering up my own roaches. He has his own roach speed on the way. And hey, if there's one thing that we can say from the start, at the very least, he does still have the spine crawlers, so a little cheeky roach fight, maybe he can still get something done there.
Absolutely. I mean, Denver has made a lot of roaches of a mediocre economy, but he is going for a spire behind all of this. It's kind of a weird fight though by Denver. I mean, this is an okay fight if you're still outmining your opponent, but he's not actually. So I'm a little bit confused by this. Doesn't get the queen. Really good defense here by Lambo. That's absolutely going to give him a chance. But what Lambo needs to do above anything else is detect this spire. That Overseer needs to turn around, needs to make its way into the natural. And if Lambo knows immediately that there is a spire, then obviously he's got some time to get ready for that. If he's not going to be ready for it, Nate, then I'm afraid Mudas are just going to rule the world and send Denver into the top 8 of the European scene.
To just be absolutely crazy. When we were talking about our predictions, we were all pretty in favor of Lambo, and I think for good reason. He's definitely been on form again, it feels like, this season. But Denver is here to play. What a match we've had out of him so far, and that spire that we were talking about is done. So the mutts are going to be coming out, Roddy, and we were talking about this, but Lambo, he is getting Overlord speed and +2 missiles, so I guess maybe he'll have some more info soon.
There is an Overseer morphing again near the main base. That Overseer is gonna fly in, and it's probably gonna see the Mudas hatch. That is a little bit late, but it's still gonna give Lambo that tiny bit of heads up that I guess otherwise he wouldn't have had. I'm watching his camera, by the way.
That's it. He just saw anything.
Yeah, now he sees it for the first time. He's gonna drop the Hydra then immediately. I wouldn't hate a Spore Crawler, maybe 4 Spore Crawlers, right? 1 per mineral line and then 1 between the natural and the third base, something like that. Lambo needs to take this ultra serious and just turtle like a you-know-what. That's the only chance he really has here, Nate.
Turtle like a turtle, Kevin. All right?
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
Turtle lives are important too. There's nothing wrong with hiding in your shell every once in a while when there's scary animals outside. And that might be exactly what he needs to do here, like we were just saying. Of course, Mutalisks are just generally annoying. Even if he can't do too much damage directly to Lambo, you can still have the ability to deny all that map vision and clearing out all the overlords. And Denver gets to leave his kind of spread out and around. So gets a bit of a better heads up on any ground units that might move out. So there are benefits to doing these kinds of builds. Although the spores, wow, take out 2 of them.
Yeah, it seems like Denver's like, all right, I'm clearly not going to just completely overrun you with the Mutas. So what he's going to do is something that we've seen Raynor do a lot in the past, where it's like, hey, I'm going Mutas, be worried about Mutas. And then just kidding, I'm not. I'm actually going to max out on Roaches while you're spending your drones into Spore, or making drones into Spore Crawlers, dropping a Hydra, then trying to get Hydra upgrades, waiting for all your Hydras to come out. Suddenly, the player that went Mutas in the first place will be maxed out immediately on Roach Ravager. Denver is going to find these 3 Queens, though, and that is an absolutely lovely pickup for him. But he doesn't have too many Roaches. It's mostly a couple Ravagers here, a few Roaches. I almost feel like he jumped the gun a little bit, Nate.
Yeah, this gotta get a little bit dicey. And Lambo, the door of opportunity, perhaps opening for him now as that economic gap, not really the same as it was before. He's situated nicely on the 3 bases. Gigantha has always been a good map for holding on to this. You have the ramps that head into these places that aren't crazy wide. So Lambo with a solid defense of this setup. And hey, Denver just now going into Hydralisk Den too. So he might be thinking about something else down the line. He's still building Roaches, but I'm asking, like, is he really going to try and force this? Maybe he's just hoping that Lambo won't be building any more units of his own. But these Hydralisks with their DPS in a head-to-head fight, Roddy, they're known for doing a whole lot of damage.
Yeah, this is a very questionable fight by Denver, even though he's up in supply. A lot of that supply is simply not here. Now, if he can fight a couple of these Hydras, pick them off, those are at least nice pickups, right? And if Lambo would lose all his Hydras, he could, in a weird way, even go back into Mutas. But Denver is starting to throw this game a little bit, because he really has not been taking good fights over the last few minutes. He has lost 800 resources more now, and it's also not a scenario where Denver is at 4 bases, 82 drones, everything is saturated, the 5th on the way. No, he is on 4 bases, Nate, but he only has 6 drones more than Lambo, and that does not allow him to justify the fights he's been taking in the last minute or so.
No, absolutely not. I think you said it perfectly. I mean, the Mutalisks were kind of getting trimmed off early on, and you can say, okay, maybe his game plan wasn't to actually invest, crazy amounts into the Mutalisks from the beginning, but after the last couple of fights, trying to force up that ramp, I think we always talk about how dangerous that is, and that's the reason why he's done a really good job of having a lot of Roaches, having a lot of Ravagers, and having the upgrades for them. But the Hydralisks have definitely just been a huge thorn in his side. However, he does get a side attack onto the 3rd base while he's canceling the 4th. So some of these drones might be in danger. The Roaches that were rallying out did draw the aggro. So it wasn't a huge amount of workers killed, but at the very least for Denver, even in this kind of like trade situation, he has the 4th base mineral line to work with, because we know the mains are going to be starting to mine out for both of them. So as long as he can keep Lambo from getting into a good groove from this, then maybe it doesn't matter. He's still able to get into 3 different mineral lines and pick off 8 drones here.
Yeah, he's going pretty gongo here, right? He's just running into the natural, running into the main, and meanwhile picking up a Sport Roll as well. I think it's kind of funny that his follow-up is tunneling Claws and Roaches. Well, he knows that he also forced Lambo to build Sport Crawlers to begin with when he opened up with the Mutas, but I guess you can always make some magic happen with Roaches. I think the biggest victory for Denver in the last minute and a half was honestly getting a cancel on that 4th hatchery. I think everything else was just, that's all right, it's acceptable. But once more, I'm a bit concerned about the economy, because Denver is playing like he's ultra rich, right? Like he's got 2k in the bank and 80 plus drones. He doesn't. He does have a Lurker Den on the way now, but he also doesn't have a Hive. So Lurkers without their Hive upgrades, not that terrifying. And I'm looking here and I see way more red than I see blue. Now, of course, that does mean that maybe Denver is trying to get some more damage done at the 3rd of Lambo. But Lambo knows he cannot afford to lose his hatchery anymore, and he really wants to keep it alive.
Yeah, he does try to just target it down with these Roaches. Denver starting to stutter step around it to avoid. Does actually pick it off. So the 3rd base is dead. And oh my God, that 4th. Almost no hit points left on it, Roddy. So even if it does finish, it's just a couple of biles away from, well, I mean, would basically be a pretty clean smite on that hatch, and that would not be good. Lambo cannot afford to lose any more economy.
While that fight was happening, right, I was using the PGM to take a look at the fight in the 3rd base, and I was using my own monitor to take a look at the fight at the 4th. Denver left it with less than like 10 HP. 1 Roach, the entire army was in range, but Denver just turned around. He was convinced that he had enough damage already on that hatchery to potentially take it down. That hatchery surviving at one point, literally less than 1 health away. Now Denver is actually in a bit of trouble because for the first time in forever, he is down in army supply. And I look at the army of Lambo. I think Lambo is really good in these kinds of fights. Ravages are very important here, but Lambo is finding some good connections at first with Corrosive Bile. Denver obviously does have defender's advantage, and that should be enough to at least stabilize, if not turn this into a pretty convincing victory.
Yeah, he gets through a few of the biles, but as you were saying, Kev, with the defender's advantage, and honestly, just having that the hatcheries set up the way that he does, like, it's worth pointing out. When the creep goes away, it's like a larva at that third for Lambo. They're all gone, limits the production capabilities a bit. And add to your point earlier about the fourth base that was left alive, Lambo immediately fully saturated it. So he's making as much value from this base as humanly possible.
Still low on HP. Denver is going for it. Denver is going for it. He's just going to gun it down a couple of Corrosive Biles, and Denver gets the pickoff that he perhaps could have gotten before. Yeah, now Lambo's economy really is in shambles, even though I guess the third base is finished up again. But still, Nate, it doesn't get any better.
Yes, the ultimate but steal moment, Roddy, as that's there's not a whole lot getting around it. Just Denver has done such a beautiful job in this whole series of bringing on pressure, constantly making Lambo second guess himself. But perhaps the most impressive thing is Lambo just has not been able to find a window to deal economic damage pretty much at all. Denver got that fourth base up mostly uncontested, just like with the third base and even the one in the last game. And Lambo's just been constantly on the defensive, even with less eco, and it's such a frustrating position to be in. There's the lurker burrowing outside the fourth base too. I don't believe there is an overseer there. It's at the third, and Lambo taps out Denver, wins 3-1.